Hello and welcome to Boomer Live once again, ladies and gentlemen. And here we are after one of the biggest upsets in Cricket World Cup history, you can say so, as Netherlands becomes the first non-test playing nation to defeat South Africa in one-day internationals. They're the first non-playing test nation to defeat South Africa in T20s, and they continue it. Two games, two wins against South Africa in the big stage, and they're absolutely up and running in the World Cup. And this certainly feels like a World Cup finally, as the bigger boys are getting rolled over by the smaller teams. And the diversity, the support, the fan base, what you saw in Dharamshala today, it was outstanding. And once again, it had to be the former South African man, Roloff van der Merwe, who had to lay down a little bit of shocking punches against South Africa. Along with it, it was Aryan Dutt who played a blinder by scoring 23 of 9 balls with 3 sixers, which he hit, and Scott Edwards leading from the front. We'll talk about Netherlands' bowling, which was incredible, but I'll start off with Sandeep Bunny. What an incredible game of cricket that was. They just took off from where it ended in Adelaide in 2022 October. It just felt like a continuation of that match, isn't it? Similar situation. They had Netherlands on the cliff even there. Let them go. South Africa chasing. David Miller was a decisive wicket, and once again David Miller falling here.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it is a huge win for Netherlands. But I think they have worked really hard, and they came close to getting Pakistan on the bounce, at least in the first innings itself. If they would have batted better, they would have probably got them as well. But then they were knocking on the doors, and it was bound to happen because we saw two very clinical performances with the ball from Netherlands in the game against New Zealand and Pakistan as well. Even though New Zealand scored in excess of 300, but I think they were just striving towards it, and finally they got the reward. And I think South Africa shouldn't wouldn't want to face Netherlands next time in an ICC event, because this coming in the ODI format, it is a huge upset. Because if you talk about the T20 format, the shorter format, you can still say that the Netherlands are a better T20 team, and South Africa, when it's not their day, they can falter on the T20 format. So the T20 World Cup loss was still acceptable, but this won't be, especially after the dominance that they showed against Australia in the second game. And also they dominated Sri Lanka. They broke almost all the records with the bat in the first game against Sri Lanka as well. So I think coming from those two games to this batting performance, I think they won't at all be happy. And I think credit goes to Van der Merwe with the ball and with the bat as well. You spoke about Aryan, the 23 of 9. Van der Merwe, 29 of 19. Started that fight back, started the fire along with Scott Edwards. And I think finally Scott Edwards got one captain's knock under his belt. He doesn't look the person who can really score at 120, 130 strike rate, because he does not have that muscular build, one might say, from the outset, as compared to some of the other players. But I think he was very clever in just holding one end and going at a strike rate in excess of 100. And Netherlands went on to score close to 100 runs in the last 9 overs.
Runs, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 100 runs in the last 9 overs, and I think that was the difference. Because if South Africa would have had wickets in hand, they would have gone a lot closer, probably won it as well. But that mid top order collapse from 37 no loss to 44 for 4, I think that is where South Africa really lost.
Yeah, they had a couple of things to really worry about. One was letting the tailenders or the lower order batters to score the runs they did, and also having the top order collapse. But Jaren, 140 for 7, 33.4 overs, 146 is what they ended up scoring, 145 rather. That was where the game turned around. The momentum shifted completely towards Netherlands, and South Africa were behind right from the word go when they came to bat, and they knew the conditions were against them because ball was having that steep bounce. It just felt like South Africa were playing in Cape Town for some of the times because the ball was having steep bounce and some of the balls were keeping low as well. So it was a mix of both, but Netherlands really enjoyed these conditions more than South Africa here.
I mean, I think both the teams faced very similar conditions because early on, Netherlands as well did not get a very good start. Their top order as well failed to really impress people. Max Daoud got a start today but did not convert. Ackerman, Bastelite did not even get started. So if you see, it was a very similar trajectory for both the teams. But for South Africa, I think they were already very much they pretty much lost the plot after that. I think after that 35th, 32nd, 30th, 33rd over, where Roloff Mandever just got going. It's one of those things where it's like your ex coming back and destroying you. Absolutely, because this is the kind of role that Roloff Mandever used to play for South Africa once upon a time. And ever since that, whenever he's faced South Africa in, the World Cup, be it T20 or one day, he's brought an impact. And this lad is a utility cricketer. We know that about him. And what he did today was, he even allowed Scott Edwards to play a little bit more freely, because Scott Edwards was holding one end down, and you felt like the team was going nowhere, and probably going to end up at probably 130 or 140, 150. But when Rolo Vandermoof came, he started playing that innings, allowed Scott Edwards to play freely as well, gave him a lot of belief that it's possible to score runs on this pitch. Big mistake from South Africa to keep calling slower deliveries. I don't know why that was the case, because batters, especially Aryan Dutt towards the end of the innings, did seem to struggle when there was pace on the ball. But for some reason, they felt like pace of the ball is going to help, and it was just making it easier for Aryan Dutt to see the ball. So a lot of mistakes there, a lot of calculation errors from South Africa, but then South African batters could never really recover. I think when they came on, Netherlands did a very good job. Now, I was a bit apprehensive of Scott Edwards' tactics to not give them a lot of runs early on. Try not win. Rather, their idea was to ball defensive lengths, not give them runs, and they were not really looking for wickets, which I was really skeptical about. But it worked really well, because come at the eighth over, when both Temba Bavuma and I think Quinton de Kock, when they're not able to score runs in the eighth over, Quinton de Kock got the first snap. Then Temba followed, because there was a lot of pressure. It was a beautiful delivery, by the way, by Vandermeer. And from there on, once they lost those 2 wickets, once they were 40 odd for 2, I think that really brought South Africa in a position where they're like, should we save wickets or should we go after the bowling? And that, again, that indecisiveness, you saw that Netherlands were really on top, and from there on, they just got derailed completely.
Yeah, I agree with you there. But Sandeep, just talking about this particular, Manhattan as well, if you have it, as we have it on the screen for South African batting. If you looked at clumps of wickets they lost from over numbers 8 to over number 11, that's where I think the game turned around on its head as well. As you mentioned, that collapse which triggered really put Netherlands back in the game. Van Meeker and Van Beek, both of them striking well. And I personally think that's something which South Africa should have anticipated given the conditions, but it was just poor strategy from South Africa as well. Maybe that if they had wickets in hand, if they had 33 overs, if they had 100 or maybe 90 to chase with wickets in hand, that was possible in Dharamshala, because the ball is going to travel faster in Dharamshala, and the pitch is good late night under lights because the dew also comes in. That was a poor tactical planning as well. I know there was some really good balls, especially the one which Aiden Markram got. They couldn't do much to those kind of balls, but there was some poor shot making as well there.
Exactly, no two ways about it, because if you see that Manhattan, you'll see that they lost 4 wickets in 5 overs, and after a point, if you see that you are losing 2-3 wickets, you should have like Jaren said, that they were caught in between two minds whether to attack or to defend, and I think Van der Dussen's dismissal was a result of it, because he was trying to reverse sweep Van der Merwe in his second over, trying to catch him off guard. Well, it's a shot that he plays quite often, but I feel that they should have. It was that sort of a phase where they should have probably looked to hold their wickets and save their wickets so that they could capitalize towards the later end. Because you saw that Keshav Maharaj and the lower order did whack it still, because at number 8 you could see Koitse coming in, scoring 20 odd runs. Then Keshav Maharaj was there till the end. You could see even Ngidi and Rawara provide some support as well. So if they would have had wickets in hand, I think 90 to 100 runs, even if they had to chase 90 to 100 runs in the last 10 to 12 overs, Dharmasala ball would come into the bat quite nicely during the evening as well. And also shorter boundaries on one side. If you see the boundary of the fine leg or third man based on the overs, I think it was 61 to 62 meters. And if you can just shorter boundaries, you could have taken advantage of it as well. That is what Netherlands did, and I think it was. They did not really have a game plan. They did not expect Netherlands to come out with the bat, and after they were 140 for 7 in 33 overs, they did not expect Netherlands to go and post 245 for 8. They did not expect this sort of a fight back from Netherlands, and that is where they were caught off guard. because I even Netherlands knew and South Africa knew that Netherlands the bowling is the strongest suit, and when the top order collapsed for Netherlands and it was 140 for 7, I think it was South Africa just took it too casually. There was no plan B. The plan A was suffering. They were bowling slower deliveries to Arender, and they were all over the place with the ball as well. And once they started losing wickets, there was no plan B as well. You saw Heinrich Klaassen just going after the bowling. He and David Miller was stitching some sort of a partnership. They had a 40-run partnership going on. And then suddenly you saw Heinrich Klaassen get out. And then Marco Jansen couldn't really capitalize. And it got difficult in that middle overs to sort of take the momentum forward and not lose wickets and score many runs as well, because they had already wasted a lot of overs up front when they were losing wickets as well. So I think the conservative approach that they took towards the later part of the innings, they could have taken probably after the loss of Quinton de Kock, because he has been their prolific scorer in the past. And I think the Markram wicket should have been their way of just saying to calm themselves down. And Van der Dussens trying to reverse sweep at that point was absolutely nonsense. And I think they lack cricketing minds.
I mean, I
Yes.
just add to what Sandeepani said. They would have still won the match, but the reason why they lost, right? I think the man of the match is Scott Edwards. I mean, first of all, I really think it should be Van der Merwe, to be very frank, because for me at
Yeah.
least. But if there's another aspect of it, which I think is the man of the match, has to be the bowlers, of the South African bowlers. 31 extras. They've lost the match by just 38 runs. So 31 extras, which is 12% of Netherlands total, is the reason why they lost. Simple as that. Imagine
Yeah.
South Africa chasing 200 and I think 207 runs, if I'm not wrong. That's how it
Yeah.
come to.
Yeah.
207 odd runs. They would have won the match. But just add, I think, really sad to see a very good bowling lineup like South Africa give so many extras away,
Yep.
and that is where the match was set. They wouldn't have crossed a 300, 240 or a 220 even if that extras were not given. So, and also like Sanjay mentioned, some really rash shots. What was really needed, I think Sanjay Manjari could give a very good example. Asia Cup, how India, when they were those many wickets down against Sri Lanka, the kind of innings that both KL Rahul and Ishan Kishan played, that was the way we expected Markram and Markram, not Markram, at least Heinrich Klaassen to play, Van der Dussen to play, because the stage was set for Van der Dussen. But for him to go ahead and play that rash shot just showed that maybe the way to stop this team is to starve them of boundaries, and then they might crumble.
And you
True.
would always believe that in that South African batting lineup, you would believe that Van der Dussen is that player that they want to play a long inning. He can hold one end together, and then you can have the explosiveness of a Markram, Klaassen, or a David Miller going on from the other end. So they did not have that one stable batter at one end. The anchor was missing in the South Africa's innings, because you either expect a Bavuma or a Quinton de Kock or a Van der Dussen, either of the top three, to go and play that long innings, and the others will support you throughout the way. And especially because they had lost Markram, the informed Markram, Quinton de Kock was gone as well, and they had lost 3 wickets in 5-6 runs. That shot was absolutely unexpected and uncalled for.
Absolutely. So Rajesh Matthew says if South Africa would have played like a test match with few wickets down, they would have easily won. And once again, proved they choke under pressure. I mean, that's a very valid point. I think that's something which Jaren also rose right now. Maybe it should have taken a lot more time, and that's something which I rose as well. Should have been much more technically, nuanced with the kind of shot making they had. They should have had their astuteness with their preparation as well. Understanding the conditions, sometimes they used to get carried away with smaller totals. You don't want the required run rate to be stepping up as well. But I thought Van der Dussen, or let it be likes of David Miller as well. David Miller, I still think he ran out of partners, but at least for Klaassen, he should have been more proactive. He should have understood the game situation, the game awareness is a very big factor, which a lot of teams are lacking throughout this tournament. It's a factor which is less spoken about, but at times you do have to highlight it in situations like this. The game awareness. Where is a game leading to? Do you want to play in a certain template because you want to build that net run rate? Sometimes 2 points is much more important than a net run rate which is there in offing. And that's why game awareness is a factor which comes into play. And today they lacked it. Aisha says well played Netherlands, and Aisha also says Netherlands will defeat India. That's an interesting point. Flying Dutchman. Netherlands is the nemesis of South Africa. Okay, that's a very interesting question. How far did mental disadvantage play a factor in today's game? So, buddy, I think that's an interesting point because now two back-to-back games. Do you think anything or the wounds of 2022 World Cup would have played any sort of factor today? Because if you remember, it was a very similar game which took place even in Adelaide in 2022, where you had Netherlands on the cliff, then towards the latter in the tail end of this game and swept South Africa away to score 158 odd. And even while South Africa was batting, they had the game. Then they lost clumps of wickets in tandem, and David Miller was the last possible hope, and they just lost it from there on. Maybe to an extent, the wounds were still fresh from what happened in 2022, you reckon?
Yeah, I think the template was same, but I don't think there would have been any sort of mental disadvantage from a South Africa's point of view, especially after the win that they got against Australia. I think mentally, I think they would have been at a very high, because they scored some 420 odd runs against Sri Lanka, and then against Australia as well. It was a powerful performance, winning by 130 odd runs, scoring in excess of 300. So I think they didn't really have that mental disadvantage, but I think they took it too easy. I think it was the other way around. I think they were a bit complacent when they came out to bat, because you expect those sort of shots, or you actually go for the net run rate when you think you already have the game in hand. When will you go for a better net run rate? Whenever you know that you already have the game in hand, you would probably look to better your net run rate and go after the bowling in a different way. And I think that is where South Africa really lost it. I think they were complacent rather than mentally at a worse situation before the game.
Yeah, the interesting point of complacency there, because in this World Cup it's the third day, and after India Pakistan match, the second upset in a trot. You can say yesterday's match was the only difference, but then Afghanistan defeating England, Netherlands defeating South Africa. I think it's that time of the World Cup where the big boys are shaken all of a sudden. The smaller teams are getting used to the conditions and the format, and this tend to happen. In every World Cup, you see this phase also happen. But then an awakening is important for every big team. And you'd rather hope this loss just came at the right time for the Netherlands as well, for the South Africans as well. You don't want a loss like this when you're trying to qualify, which is towards the latter end of the tournament. It's important to get this loss away earlier on. Maybe in that stance, you can say it's South Africa will be much more relieved than in a qualification spot where you would have been, maybe dreading to lose against Netherlands, then losing the choker tag coming again. That could have been even worse. As Rajesh Matthew rightly mentions, two consecutive losses. The last one would have hurted them much more than this one.
Yeah, I mean, the last one was really heartbreaking for South Africa because they had a decent T20 World Cup. I mean, they beat India, who were considered favorites in that. They did a very, very good job when it came to that format, and they did accomplish. I mean, South Africa is one of the better teams in Australia. They've beaten Australia so many times before, so was really a heartbreak for them. This one, though, they probably will not feel as bad because one, it comes after two really good wins. I know they would have loved to take these 2 points and go back home, but they'll always think that it is one of those days. It happens, and better today than maybe towards the end of the tournament, like you mentioned, April. But I think for me, just going back to what Michael Andrew said, right? I think there was mental disadvantage after the end of the first innings, because if you see the way both the teams went back to the pavilion, you see the two batters of Netherlands. There was Aryan Dutt and Scott Edwards. They had smiles on their faces. They were very happy with their performance. And I know Rolf van der Merwe said that they wanted more than 245, which I think was greedy, but then he wanted to be greedy, so fair enough. But having said that, if you look at South Africa, the way they were walking back, it almost felt like you had to bring in a crane to carry them off. You knew that they knew in their hearts and minds that they messed up, and I think they carried that onto the field as well. Both Quinton de Kock and Temba Baumer didn't look really excited or really geared up. I think there's a lot of what happened in the last 5-6 overs on their minds. And then when they did not get those quick runs in the power play, I think that just started weighing on them a lot more. And from there on,
but Jaden, don't you think it would be called shameless if you concede 104 runs in 9 overs against the tail ender and then work off happily? I think that would be just called shameless.
Absolutely. And you wouldn't see them smile. But then you knew that, I think there's a difference between being upset and completely letting. Yeah, I think, see, you can be upset, but maybe leave that towards the end of the match. Maybe wait for the coach to yell at you. Maybe take it to the dressing room and be upset. But you could see on the face there that they were distraught. And I think that's not a good thing to have, right? It's okay. Like, there could be one way, where you could be like, okay, fine, we gave too many runs away, but this is still in our hands. I think that is what they probably hoped. But that thought, the lingering thought in their head, and I think maybe somewhere, someplace, the memories of Adelaide kind of crept in, especially when they lost those 4 wickets. Because I
Yeah,
think if you saw the camera going back to the South African dressing room, you could see some worried faces there, even though they still did not have
yeah,
a lot to chase. I know there was only 43 overs. I think the rain
Yeah.
also curtailing the match helped, because I genuinely don't think they would have gone beyond 250, 260 South Africa. So I feel that 7 overs were actually lost helped Netherlands a lot more than it
yeah,
helped South Africa, because I think there would have been 36 more extra balls for them to chase the score down. But yeah,
yeah,
having said that, yeah, I mean, it was just that kind of a day. And I think it's a good thing for South Africa to lose this match, because this will now test their what do you say, character. Because they've been playing
yeah.
fearless brand. Today they did not play fearless band, and I hope they realize that was a bigger error, and not the fact that I know there was a lot of other things, but today they were not fearless and they were fearful and they lost because of that.
Yeah,
Netherlands
sometimes I
were.
agree with you on that as well. You have to maybe go out there and set the tone, like what Rohit Sharma did against Pakistan. Sorry to bring that back again to the Pakistan fans out here, but then that's how you can chase a small total down. When you're chasing scores of 200, 190, you have to set the tone in order to be there in the game from very first ball. In the power play, if you can score 60, 70 runs, then all of a sudden the bowling plans of this Netherlands team gets all over the place. Then they will have to be searching for answers. They'll have to bring a plan B. They'll have to look for different options to try in the power play. That's something which South Africa did not do, which they did in the first couple of
And I
matches at
think
least.
that was actually really really clever of the Netherlands team to employ spin throughout when Quinton de Kock was batting. First 7 overs, all spinners, and they had this in mind that if they could get Quinton de Kock early, they could probably provide a proof. Put South Africa under a lot of pressure, and that they did. And I think credit should go to all the Netherlands bowlers as well. I think 245 against South Africa in this pitch was difficult to defend if they wouldn't have had wickets. And I think that
Yeah.
is one thing they did perfectly well. There was a cluster of 5 overs where they lost 4 wickets, where they took 4 wickets rather. But other than that, they also chipped in, and whenever a partnership was it was looking threatening, they took a wicket, and there were wickets at regular intervals that really stemmed South Africa's momentum. And there was
Mhm.
no momentum in that innings from South Africa, apart from
Absolutely.
that stand between probably a Miller and Klaasen, where they were looking like they were steadying themselves. But then Klaasen went away, and then there was some quiet overs, and then you had the fall of Janssen. Kwanzaa tried to come in and counter attack, but it did not work as well. So I think all the bowlers, especially the pacers, Van Meekeren, Logan Van Beek, Bas de Leede, all came in and chipped in perfectly. And also, I think the spinners started off really, really well. Colin Ackerman, Aryan Dutt, and especially Roloff van der Merwe, everybody was perfect today. And I think this
Absolutely.
has been their strength. And also, I don't know who is the captain, because sometimes it seems like Max O'Dowd with the paper looks a better captain than Scott Edwards, because I think he was calling the shots. Actually,
Yeah.
dressing room was calling the shots. And it's a feature that we have seen from this Netherlands side. They do their homework really seriously, and
Yeah.
the tactics that they employ on field are all coming from the dressing room. Most of it
Yeah.
are actually coming from the dressing room.
Absolutely. If you look at this, if you look at the breakdown of the phases of this game, you can't really separate the two teams in the first 3 to 4 phases. But the last phase, that was the difference. And that's where South Africa missed the trick by not conserving the wickets. And that's when Netherlands really went hard at them with the tailenders, as we repeated. The last phase, it was a turning point in this game. As Jen also pointed out about the extras, if they were to control these basics right, maybe concede 25 lesser or 40 lesser in the last phase with that amount of wickets they had picked, this was a different game. Rajesh Matthew has an
I mean,
interesting point as well.
I'll
The
just
loss
add
South
a point
Africa
to
has happened.
it.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll just add a point to what you said, Abel. I think one more error from South Africa today was the fact that the team they picked, they had only 5 bowlers. So when the likes of Lungi Ngidi and Gerald Coetzee went for runs, there was no one else that they could really go to, that someone like Temba Bavuma could go to. I was a bit surprised why he did not go to an Aiden Markram, because you look at Keshav Maharaj, he bowled a very good spell. I know he did not get wickets, but he only gave away 38 runs. He was the most economical bowler aside from Marco Jansen. So I just felt it wouldn't have been a bad thing to throw the ball to Aiden Markram, because second half of the innings, I think better than bowling slower balls onto the pitch, maybe throwing the ball to an Aiden Markram in the middle over somewhere could have helped them out, because if you look at two of the bowlers, right, he had to keep bowling Lungi Ngidi and Gerald Coetzee in the last few overs, even though they were going for runs. So that could have been avoided if they had an extra option. I don't know why Tabrez Shamsi is missing out again and again, but I think it's probably because of the balance of the team, which I mean, but then even then, probably in Adam Akram, not a bad option to go to. You only have five bowlers. You can't play at international level anymore with just five bowlers because at least one bowler is going to have a bad day regardless. And not every match is India Pakistan where all five bowlers get wickets.
And I
Yeah,
think that
even
is where the
there, even there.
complacency steps in. I think Bavuma did not have a plan B. They South Africa were really on top of the game till the 34th over or 35th, 34th over when Netherlands were 131 for 7. So they thought that they could really end this quickly with Gerald Coetzee and Ngidi doing the job for them. What they
Yeah,
did not expect was Netherlands to come back and counterattack so hard. And I think if they would have had this sort of had any sort of intuition, they would have probably given Markram an over or two earlier on as well. But they took Netherlands lightly, and I think this is why South Africa more so than ever deserved to lose, because I think they were complacent with the ball towards the later end and with the bat as well early on.
yeah. This often happens, when you get a team on the mat, 7 down for 130 odd, you often tend to be relaxed. You often tend to think, okay, we might just concede 20, 30 more. But in modern day cricket, if they can all hold the bat, they can come back harder in the game. And today, once again, was a clear cut example as to if you're batting till the last man or till number 9, 10, it can be an effect in the game. We have often heard that if your top 7 can't do, your number 8, 9, 10 can never do it. But today was a clear cut example of why you need the batting depth in every team. And once you have the batting depth who really pack a punch, it can be decisive differences in games like that, especially for the teams who are lower ranked. This loss of South Africa has opened up the World Cup wide open. Australia, Pakistan, England are in contention for the semi-finals. I agree with you. I mean, for South Africa, I still think it's early days. They are going to have some tough games. Pakistan and Chennai is not going to be easy. England and Mumbai, that's a big thing they have coming. They don't want to lose 2 in a row and go into that Pakistan with 2 losses. So I think England versus South Africa is going to be one of the games of the tournament, in my opinion, because that's going to really decide where this is going to go. Because after that, Australia and New Zealand are also going to be playing against each other. So from now onwards, it's hot seat time. We're
I think
close
this
into
week is
a
going to
number
be
5.
very, very explosive with the Pakistan versus Australia and England versus South Africa being the headline. I think these two games will
Yeah.
have a
And
huge,
the
huge
next
impact
week
on the
is
points
pretty
table.
exciting because you're going to have India, New Zealand, Australia. Then you're going to have Pakistan, Pakistan, South Africa. Then
Yeah.
England with South Africa as well. So next week is extremely hectic. It's like the big boys in action, all going to fight up against each other, and you are going to see a team really go behind. You're going to see some team takes big leap as well, especially like some England, New Zealand, or in
I
for the
think
matter Australia would want to.
Afghanistan will I think you shouldn't take Afghanistan lightly. I mean, they lost to Bangladesh, and I think that will be a huge, huge factor in why they couldn't or will not be able to pose a real threat to the top 4 or the top 6 teams right now. But I think Afghanistan and Netherlands, I had mentioned it in the last live as well, where when Netherlands played New Zealand, that you can expect two or three wins from Netherlands and 1-2 upsets. I think this shouldn't be considered an upset, and I think they are going to play Sri Lanka next. And looking at what Sri Lanka are doing with the ball, and looking at what Netherlands are doing with the ball, and the effort that they're showing on the field, I think they will not be the underdogs going into that game.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. मेरे को डर लग रहा है अफगानिस्तान के साथ because of what Afghanistan has already shown. But tomorrow's game is very interesting in Chidambaram, in Chennai. Afghanistan, New Zealand is no small game as well because I think Afghanistan are flying right now. They are the team with the momentum and give them the conditions. And Chennai is no better pitch than for them to play cricket on. They're going to be playing Pakistan and New Zealand here. If they get a win here among the two games, they're going to be very pleased with their performance. And I think tomorrow's game, especially for New Zealand, they have to be worried because of what the Afghanistan team has got in their goods. I know there are some really good players who spin there. You likes of Latham can sweep. The likes of Conway is good. He's used to playing in Chennai conditions. Sandner is going to be very effective.
I think
But
the
let's
key
just
would
not
be
take them
not to give
lightly.
away the game to New Zealand in the first innings itself. So I think Afghanistan should look to bat first and put some runs on the board so that they can
Yeah.
really put the pressure on New Zealand. Because if they allow New Zealand to just get
But
in
you've
and
seen
then
the due factor kicking in Chennai as well. So would you really want to bat first?
no, I would still want to bat first because given Afghanistan's batting, you see their past history as well. You would see that some of the more historical or crucial wins that they have got have been putting runs on the board and then putting pressure on the opposition. let the dew come. If you have runs on the board, you can put pressure on the opposition. But if
Absolutely. I
New
think
Zealand bats first and just takes the game away from you, 300 odd runs, and you have exciting players like Rahmanullah Gurbaz who can come in the first innings. Players like them have been a huge factor for Afghanistan in the first innings. If you compare Gurbaz's stats in the first innings to that of his stats in the second innings, I think you will see the
yeah.
disparity over there.
I think that's a very good point. If Afghanistan bat first score 250 odd, we have a match on our hands. Absolutely. I think Trent Bolt under lights is going to be much more threatening for Afghanistan because of that Chennai weather and whatever you've seen from the seamers in the second innings. So score runs, nullify the Trent Bolt threat by making him ball in the daytime and take control of the game by having a long opening partnership. Do not lose wickets in clumps like what he did against England, but still go on to score big. Two games where we have seen the lower order contribute and make an upset. I think lower order contributions really take the momentum with you. You know, that's something which was repeated time and time in Mujib and Rashid scoring, or here today, Love Vandermeer and Aryan that scoring. And that's the essence of this World Cup. If your lower order can contribute in some way or the other, that can really help the team in terms of sealing games and taking the momentum away as well. But having said that, I personally think we are still in for to predict the semifinals. I think certain teams you can still say. I think there are still two spots which are wide open, third and fourth. And I'm not saying that all the teams have sealed it, but still, looking at it from a larger prism of things, two spots are still up for grabs. And I think the teams which start peaking now, let it be Australia, let it be England, let it be Pakistan for the matter, if they start peaking
I
now,
think
they have a good
out
tournament
of
coming
those
up.
two teams as well, if Afghanistan can pull off something special tomorrow, I think another team will look to be a little shaky, maybe.
Yeah. But I think if Afghanistan can pull off a win tomorrow, it's going to be very
There's an
interesting.
interesting thing about New Zealand, though, guys. I mean, in this World Cup, so far, I mean, all the teams have played 3 matches, so I think we have a sizable sample. If you look at average against spin, right, batting average against spin, New Zealand are the second best team. So they aren't a team which you can easily expect to be rolled over when it comes to spin. Now they've got some decent players as well, and I mean, if there's one team that's better than them, it's India. India's has a staggering average of I think 154. But if you remove that, because New Zealand, I know New Zealand have played Netherlands and England, two teams who don't really look at their spinners and expect them to be their strength. But they also played Bangladesh, so
Yeah.
it's not like they haven't played quality spin. So having said that, I think New Zealand will feel a little confident.
But then again,
Also
I
because
think Kane Williamson will be a big miss because he was
Not
one
just
of
that,
yeah,
I
those.
think the spinners of Afghanistan is slightly more different in comparison to an English spinners or Netherlands spinners or Bangladesh. Bangladesh is still more conventional off spinners. Here you have a Rashid Khan who's slightly more unconventional with his leg spin. Then you have a Mujib who balls those, all those kind of variations which he's gotten. I think maybe tomorrow it's not a bad idea to try someone like Kais Ahmed as well. Just throw him into the deep and see how he fares up. If he can perform well, maybe I know Naveen is doing a good job. Maybe Fazal can rest. Go in with a complete spin bowling attack, spin trio, and including Nabi there. I think that could be the best
And I
possible
think
option
what we
for
saw from
Netherlands.
Kais Ahmed in the Asian Games, I think he really bowled well. He was there in the Asian Games. He was one of the factors why Afghanistan made it past Sri Lanka and Pakistan and made it to the finals as well. I think it was his performance. I think
Leave
he picked
Asian
up three
games. What he
wickets
did in the IPL is good enough, to show the world that what he can
as well.
possibly do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's not Kais. I think I'm talking about Noor Ahmed. I'm very sorry,
Noor
guys.
Ahmed, yeah.
Noor Ahmed. I'm not talking about Kais Ahmed. It's another spinner. Noor Ahmed is the one. Yeah, Noor Ahmed. I often get confused between both of them because both of them are very similar with their bowling. Bowling. I think Noor Ahmed
I
is a
think
left
after
arm.
Rashid Khan, you have lots of leg spinners from Afghanistan who are, and
Yeah.
also young talents as well. They aspire to be like Rashid Khan because you have a sporting icon I mean, in your country as
Yeah.
well.
I mean, I'm very surprised that Noor Ahmed is not getting a chance in this team because he was a starter in that team for Gujarat Titans who played the final, and he was one of the better bowlers in that final, better than Rashid Khan as well. New Zealand fast bowlers look the best of lot. Yes, they have good fast bowlers, but they only have two of the fast bowlers. Now that's the biggest issue for them. They have Matt Henry and the Trent Bolt. Lockie Ferguson is a big factor who can be targeted
But
tomorrow,
the good
and
thing for them is Lockie Ferguson did pick up a couple of wickets against Bangladesh, and
but it's
he looks
Bangladesh
at
at the
least
end
to
of the
be in
day.
some sort of form.
just making a case for KS, I mean not KS Ahmed, but
Noor
Noor.
Ahmed.
Noor Ahmed, I mean, in Chennai, right, since 2013, if you look at the average and the economy, Chinaman bowlers have done the best when it comes to different types of bowlers. So not a bad thing to throw in a Noor Ahmed on his World Cup debut in Chennai because historically it just seems like, I mean, I know a lot of it is contributed by Kuldeep Yadav, but historically in one days, since 2013, Chinamen are the best bowlers. So,
Yeah,
and the
how
But
many
fact
then
that
they'll
cricketers?
have a
Lafta
tough call
Mustafa
to
has
make,
played in
right?
Chennai.
But then they'll have a tough call to make because you spoke about probably giving Fazalak Faruqi the rest, but
Yeah.
uh, I think the new ball will do a bit as well. So
but
I
the
wouldn't
question
consider
then,
dropping Navinul
yeah,
Haq as well.
I think the bigger risk cable is also the fact that what happens when if they don't win the toss, right? What happens if they don't win the toss? They end up chasing. I mean, they end up defending a target, and there's due. In that case, a Chinaman can become a liability very
I
quickly.
still think Fazlak Faruqi can be susceptible to going for a lot of runs, and I still think he doesn't really fit into this team. I know he can pick up maybe a couple of wickets like he did against Johnny Bairstow in the game against England, but he still tends to go for a lot of runs to a lot of
Towards the later
tail-enders,
end,
even the
I think
middle of.
he's a very
Yeah,
potent
so
bowler at the start of the spell, and I think
yeah, I wouldn't have
why
that
I
risk, you know.
support why I would rather have a Fazalak Faruqi over Navin Ulhaq is because I think they need wickets at the top, and I think Mujib and Fazalak Faruqi can do the job with the new ball. You can have a Noor Ahmed and Rashid Khan operating in the middle overs along with Mohammad Nabi, but Navin Ulhaq, I don't know how much of an effect he'll have on with the new ball. He has done a
I
good job
agree.
for Lucknow Super Giants, but it's still early days. Fazalak Faruqi has better results with the new ball and more experience as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you totally in that terms because sometimes you need a little bit of experience, which really turns the games around. And the best option which you can really go into is to have possibly to have a bowler who has been picking up wickets, and you don't want to change a winning combination, as they say. You just won a game. The team is in high spirits, and chopping and changing there might not really help you. But ultimately, it comes down to the very fact that what do you want to really strategize for every game. And I think the best of teams, tactically well off teams, have always strategized for games as they come by. They've not really pre-planned the 11. They go as per how they want to, looking at the conditions, and that's the only way you can win these games. If you look at the World Cups historically as well, you need to have courses in certain games where you're going to bring in a bowler who might be suited more to the conditions, and depends on the pitch. If you look at the Bangladesh surface they played in, that was one of the better Chennai batting wickets in a long, long time. So I thought New Zealand was very comfortable playing that wicket. But if you look at the match which Australia and India played, that was a black soil wicket where the ball was keeping low, the ball was turning. I think in that kind of wicket, going into four spinners is a very good idea. And that's the best way to put blocks on New Zealand, not let them go away anywhere. And you've seen New Zealand struggle multiple times as well when you have gone with that certain strategy. And you have options in bowlers as well. You can drop a Fazlak Faruqi because Omar Zai can bowl a little bit as well. So it's not a bad thing to drop him, and let's see how things go from there on, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's a risk reward situation. One of those things where that you're taking a risk, but then there are rewards for it as well. I mean, as I said, right, Chinaman bowlers are one of the
I have a
best
very
in chess.
interesting thing. I might drop a Rahmat Shah and bring in someone like a Noor Ahmed. Rahmat Shah is a good player, but then I think everybody can go
Um,
one step up because I think this is a good team to have Rashid Khan batting at number 7.
I still believe able that's a bigger risk, and that's a risk that I wouldn't take at least as a manager because Afghanistan's batting is really not impressed. I mean, they only did a very good job in the last innings, and that too, it was not really their top order that did the job; it was their lower order, and all you need that extra padding when it comes to batting. So if I have to take the risk, I'll remove someone from the bowling itself, not anyone in the batting order, and that's only because I'm worried about Afghanistan's batting because if there's a collapse, you don't expect a Mujibur Rahman to come and score 30 every day. That just doesn't happen.
But Amber Shah isn't really impressed. Maybe tomorrow is his day if he goes on to play well and good for him. But then I still think you have to take some bold calls. Your strength is your bowling. Your best way to win is to outball them and to ball them out with your spin, court threat, whoever you have. And the best way to go is to go in with an all spin attack. Is Latham captain of New Zealand? How is this captaincy record? Latham's captaincy has been good so far for whatever opportunities he's got. He's done a good job. I mean, he's rotated his bowler as well. He's looked extremely proactive as well. But if you look at his bilateral records as well, he's not maybe a Kane Williamson level when it comes to handling pressure, but I still think he's the best option available in that team in
I
comparison to
mean, in
Ben
an
Rahman.
ICC tournament for New Zealand, you don't need a captain. You all the 11 players just step over on their own and they perform.
Absolutely. Until it's a final of the tournament or semi final, wherever they go into. So until then, it's all safe for New Zealand. But
As long as it's not a
They are not
knockout
playing
and they're not
India.
facing India, yeah,
yeah,
they're not
next is
facing
India. I
India.
hope it's last time India defeated New Zealand was way back in 2003. So we all were in our nappies when that happened.
No,
So
I
it's
think
been a
if
long, long time.
I think the way to go is counter attack, but I will speak about it in our preview of the India versus New Zealand game.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think
I
Rohit
think India
Sharma
have a
and
couple of
Shubman
things
Gill are
to
going
come.
to come out all guns blazing.
It all depends. I think we are too far-fetched about that game. We still have 6 more days. So
And a game
I think
against Bangladesh
we
in
don't
between.
have to be star sports guys to be sitting here and talking about Indian team. Everywhere they go, what is happening in Pune in between a game which is happening of Netherlands, South
Follow the
Africa.
Blues.
Follow the Blues. And I understand the PR and marketing, but I don't think we'll be sitting here and talking way too ahead of what's happening in Pune, what Indian team is eating while a match is going on, or while Netherlands have
But I
gotten
think we
one of the
should give
biggest
a shout
victories.
out to the Netherlands coaching staff, and the head coach in particular, because I think the performances that they have put in, uh, Ryan Tenderskate and also Ryan Cook did a spectacular job as well to form this team and to have the base of it over the last year or so. I think they have been one of the more improving sides across the world.
Yeah, I think they've had a better bowling lineup than Pakistan in this tournament so far. So they have all the rights to
Obviously.
really celebrate it. I think, to be very fair, they've had a much more well-rounded bowling attack and a much composed batting lineup than Pakistan in this tournament. On that note, ending it right here. Have a good night, all of you. See you all tomorrow. Bye bye.
Good night, guys.
Good night, guys.